Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. We're here to connect, inspire, and create. And every week, a new guest joins us to share a bit of inspiration, creativity, and tips on how you can improve your own photography. Upcoming presentations can be found on my website at lindanickell.com. Under Happiness Hour, you'll find the links to my YouTube channel where I post all of the sessions. So if you miss one, you'll be able to watch it there. My guest tonight is Judy Royal Glenn. Judy is a nature and wildlife photographer based in Tennessee. Her passion for photography is fueled by her faith and her love for nature. You'll find her work includes beautiful subjects like hummingbirds and monarch butterflies, but her favorite subject to photograph are black bears. Judy has been photographing the black bears that call Cades Cove their home, just inside the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. She'll talk about knowing your subject, their diet, and how to recognize signs of bears in the wild. The more you know about black bears will improve your chances to photograph them. Judy has been here before. She's done a presentation on hummingbirds, and she's done a presentation. Oh, no, sorry, Judy, you've only done hummingbirds. It was session number 58, hummingbirds, how to find them in their natural habitat and photograph them. So you can find that on the YouTube channel. Welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Judy. How are you?
Hey there, good, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Of course. And so we were talking earlier, and so Judy is doing the presentation for us tonight, and she had done the hummingbird presentation for us I guess it was last April, actually. And so I also host and moderate a Facebook page for Texas Women Photographers. So somehow I managed to persuade, blackmail, I don't know. I just got her. So she's going to come and do another presentation next week. So 2 in a row. So I'd say I owe you one, but I don't repay favors. So thank you for being here. All right, Judy. What did I miss in your bio? Anything you want to share? What have you been doing since we last saw you?
Well, actually, you mentioned about the monarchs, and I actually raise monarch butterflies, and I have 4 in chrysalis right now. And then I have 3 chrysalises that are the variegated Gulf fritillary butterfly. So I'm excited to be able to release those shortly.
Yeah, and one of the things that you do with those butterflies when you do the releasing, do you want to tell them, or do I get to like brag on you?
You can tell them. You can tell.
So I think this is really special. She, takes care of the chrysalis for the amount of time they need to do their thing. And when she does the releases, she dedicates them she'll accept requests from people and basically dedicates a prayer, and they're released in that person's name. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So it's a really sweet thing, and we're Facebook friends, and it's one of those things I've got to see on her Facebook, and it's very special. So
I really enjoy it.
Yeah. All right. People are here because they want to talk about black bears, or they want to learn about black bears. Being in Texas, I struggled to have a photo that I could post to kind of promote your session, and I have 0 black bears. I know that there is a family in West Texas, kind of Big Bend area, and my brother lives in South Texas. That he sits on the border of Laredo and Nuevo Laredo, right on the line. And last summer, I believe, a black bear had gotten farther north than Laredo, and that was very, very rare. And the whole community got excited because that's just something you don't see. And I, unfortunately didn't get to see it, but got to hear about it. So this is very foreign to me. So I'm just going to kind of let you brag about the bears that you get to hang out with in the Smoky Mountains.
Okay. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So did you know that there is an estimated 1,500 bears that live in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park? And I even met one ranger that believed that that number could be close to 2,000. So that was one question I wanted to throw out there. And a silly one is, did you know that photographers in Cades Cove named the black bears? I know that sounds kind of odd, but I don't know who started it, but they did. And here is Charlotte. And if you'll notice about Charlotte, Charlotte has a little bit of cinnamon coloring on her. She's a beautiful bear. She's had several litters of cubs, and I was fortunate enough to be able to photograph her. And this picture here is one of her cubs, and you can see her big foot right there on the edge of the screen. And this is one of my, well, I have many, many favorites. This is one of my favorite pictures because it looks like he's got a halo over his head from the branch. And did you also know that there are 2 million people, and this has been in 2019, that visit Cades Cove? And you think, okay, well, that might not be a large number, but wait till I show you the map and how in relative space it's small. So you cram a bunch of people in there and you get a kind of couple of headaches going on in there. So the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which Cades Cove is within, they have as many as 14,000 people come into it. And that was 2021, excuse me. But I wanted to say first, before I started out, that I am not a bear expert at all. I've only been photographing bears since 2017. So I'm still learning. No, I can't tell you the names of the bears. Now, I do have a 73-year-old senior friend of mine who can tell you the names. She's a gazelle. She could jump out of my car before I can even hardly put the car in park. She and I are buds. And how did we meet? Cades Cove. So we're going to talk a little bit at the very end about the importance of talking to people. And that's actually how I found out about Cades Cove, as I was photographing at the State Botanical Garden of Georgia. And it was one of the guy friends of mine. And he just happened to say, have you heard of Cades Cove? And I said, no. And so he says, you've never heard of Cades Cove? And I said, no. So thank you to my friend Danny for telling me about Cades Cove, or I would not be here tonight. Wonderful Christian man. I love him to death. So a little bit about Cades Cove. It is a beautiful place. It is absolutely gorgeous. This year, I saw a double rainbow. And then not long ago, I saw a fog bow. I don't know if you've ever seen one before. That was a first for me as well. And then this one is just me out hiking out in the fields on the paths. This one I kind of try to do a panorama so you can see a little bit about what we're talking about. But Cades Cove is only 11 miles of a one-way road. And then all along, as you can see on the map, there are different cabins, there's churches, there's barns. What happened is all these people happily lived there, and then they wanted to make it a national park. So North Carolina and Tennessee, they bought part of the land, and then they were asking the settlers to move. And some people did not want to move, and some people happily did, and they sold their land. This one man went to court 3 times to try to not move, and he lost his case and he had to move. So this was in 1820 when they first arrived there. And then it was in the 1900s. Let's see, what's the definite date we have here? The 1927 is when they decided to make it a national park. So my favorite parts about Cades Cove are Hyatt Lane and Sparks Lane. There's 2 two-way roads that go through it. It's not paved, it's a gravel road. And the bears love to cross the road. They love to walk down the road. It's just a neat, neat place. And that's where I spend a lot of my time. So if you happen to be going, that would be one place I would definitely tell you to go. So here's one where you get the cabin and then you see the barn. And I don't know definitely if that's a smokehouse or what that is that's there, but that's one of the photos that I took with the frost on the ground. And this one is called The Tree. I don't know why a tree is called The Tree, but it has a formal name. Everybody knows about it, and it's just a beautiful place. And then I wanted you to see a little bit of the landscape. So here is a bear out in the field, and I wanted to zoom in so you can see the bear. So this is typically what you would see as far as a sighting. You get the mountains in the background and the bears foraging in the fields. And I always will tell people on Instagram, I'll say, well, have a blessed day. And that's kind of like my signature that I give before I cut off on my Instagram stories and videos. So before we get to talking about black bears, I wanted you to know that there is a plethora of other critters and beautiful things for you to view. You have bucks, coyote. Now the horses, I love, they do horse trail rides. And at the end of the day, they let the horses run free all the way to the last pasture. And I love to photograph them as they run through. It's just the neatest thing. And they love meeting at the very end all their little buddies. And it's almost like they get super happy to get down there and see everybody again. So I go early morning and I usually stay very late afternoon. And when these days are long, I'm spending a 12 to 14 hour day in the cove, which could get to be kind of long for me. And then there's otters. Now I'm going to talk to you about the importance of having a waterproof pair of muck boots. But all the other photographers were on the bridge photographing down on this little guy, but I had my waterproof muck boots on. So I slid down into the little creek, and then I got eye to eye with this little fellow, which was a lot of fun, by the way. And then we have the monarchs that will definitely migrate through on their way to Mexico. As you heard Linda say, I raise monarchs. Well, I've also had the privilege of getting a license to be able to tag them in the cove last year, and then I'll be able to tag them as well this year. And there's a barred owl that loves to stay by a particular creek. In the winter, we'll have the short-eared owl that will come through. And we have hawks. And of course, I actually stopped to take a picture of the Queen's Anne lace because I thought it was beautiful. Now, the seasons are great there too, especially in the fall. We have a lot of leaf peepers that come through, and they're wanting to see all the leaf changes. And then winter is magical. The cove is magical in itself, but the winter is just stunning. Now, I know everybody's muted, so just in your head, I want you to guess what you think my coveted shots are to get in the cove. And I'll let you think about that for a minute. I don't think that you'll be able to guess them, but here they are. This is Mo. It was one of Hazel's cubs. And unfortunately, Hazel made it, but Mo did not make it. I believe that a coyote got Mo, which is really sad. But that's part of life, that sometimes all the cubs don't make it. This was this year. I was at my car and someone told me, come here, come here. And this cub climbed up on Mama's back. Another coveted shot of mine is a black bear in the white snow. I was so fortunate to get this shot. This was taken November 12th of 2019. And here's another one when she actually looked straight towards me. Her paws are covered in snow. And this was her yearling. Her yearling was about as big as she was. I think there were 2 or 3 of those. I think 2 mainly. Now, I know this shot is not in focus, but this is a bobcat butt. I was walking on this trail. I looked up. He already saw me. By the time I pulled my camera up, he had already dashed by. And I've been after this guy for a very long time. I know where he likes to roam. I know where his scat is. I've seen turkey feathers all over a particular area before, but they're very, very elusive. But I've had a friend that got him in the tree mating. And so that's my coveted shot, not his butt. Another coveted shot the photographers like to get is when the deer will jump the fence. But I've never seen a bear jump a fence. This is what they do. It's kind of slow motion though. He didn't jump very high. Now I want to tell you about a few negative aspects after I've already told you about the wonderful things about the Cove. And that is what they call a bear jam. It's not literally bear jam. It's when gazillions of cars are backed up for miles and miles and miles. This is one of mine I posted on my Instagram. But sometimes there's a really good reason that the cars are backed up that far. And this is it. You see the ranger in the left on the road. Everybody seems to be looking at something. And what is that? It was a mama bear, and soon to follow was a baby bear crossing the road. So if you're ever in the Cove and you see a bear cross the road, don't immediately start to drive, because if it's a mama, then the babies will follow behind her. But this is the reason why we have bear jams, is this truck is on the road and it parked right underneath the bears as they were up in a tree. And that's why it caused such a long bear jam. But because of that incident, I got some great shots. I'm on the other side of the road. This is the same mama up in that tree. And there she is. She had a funny stance that day. And one that I never expected to get, which was a surprise shot, was a bear sleeping in the road. Now, it was probably very warm, and he actually was a little bit bored because mom was at the base of a big walnut tree crunching on all kind of walnuts, and he got bored. And I actually got a little video of that too. The ranger volunteer had people honk their horns, all kinds of things, but this little guy refused to move. So like Linda talked about earlier, in order to get good photographs of bears, you have to know your subject. And I don't want to bore anybody, but I think this is really, really important stuff. This is Raven. Now I actually got to name Raven. I know it sounds silly, but I was at the base of a hill and I swore that I heard a raven say, "Up, up." It wasn't a raven, it was a blackbird. But anyway, I listened to this bird's command, and guess what? I went up, and guess what? A bear stood me and looked me in the eyes. So I named him Raven. Another negative thing that I forgot to tell you about is there's no cell phone reception there. So if anything major happens, you're going to have to get somebody to go to the ranger station. So I'm going to give you some homework. I know that you weren't expecting that. I want you to go to the nps.gov, click menu, click find a park, scroll to Great Smoky Mountains, scroll down to click black bears, and then go to what should I do if I see a bear? I'm not going to go over all those, but I want you to know that. I live for these cubs. They are amazing. And did you know that bears like to walk on logs and play on them? Now, one thing about Raven I want to tell you is you never let a bear approach you. And I knew that rule. So I made sure that as he advanced, that I stayed back.
How close are you to these bears?
Well, that's one of the things that I want to tell everybody. Willfully approaching 50 yards or any distance that disturbs them or displaces them is illegal.
Okay.
Sometimes, like I showed you, they're right on top of you on the road. So sometimes you get a real close view. But they'll tell you when you're too close. They'll snap their jaw. They'll bluff charge you. They'll hoof at you. So they let you know. Now this one, I'm going to speed up a little bit, but this is a mama nursing at the base of a tree. So as you're driving through, don't go by real fast. Look at the base of logs. Look at the base of trees, because that's where they like to hang out. And this one, I don't think I'll ever get again. She had told the cubs to go up in the tree, and then she took a nap. And it was just beautiful, because it also looked like the log had a blanket on it for her. So when you're going through the park, you also look up in the trees, because the cubs and bears like to sleep in trees. So here's two cubs, they're siblings. And this is a single bear. And this one, my friend and I, we called him Poser, because that's what he did, is he posed. Here is another sleeping bear in the rain. Now, when you have a raincoat for your lens, you have to be careful, because the rain will bounce off of it and make noise. But we'll talk a little bit more about video in a little bit. Now, you may not believe it, but a mama bear will tell a baby which tree she wants to go up to. She wants the cubs to go in. She'll motion to them or verbalizes somehow, go up this tree. And like you saw back here, she told them to go up the tree, and then she took a nap.
So I see a question in here from, I think it's from Carolyn. What lens are you using to shoot to photograph these bears?
I have the newest 500 prime.
Okay.
And then also sometimes we'll use my 1.4 teleconverter. But we'll talk about equipment in just a little bit.
Okay, great.
Yep. So now that the babies are in the tree, she wants them to come down, and she tells them that. And if you can see all these little flecks, it's the bark falling down. My voice is getting scratchy, so I'm trying not to lose it altogether.
That's okay. What time of year would you say the best chances of some, because you showed the winter images, I'm assuming in the springtime we're going to be able to see them with their cubs. What's the good, if you had to pick one time of year to come, what would you recommend?
For me, I would say the spring, for the spring cubs. But you have to be careful, because when she has these cubs, they're not out dashing across the road. They're in the woods. She's teaching them how to climb a tree, where to find food, all the food sources. So they're kind of hard to find. So I've been there for 3 days before, and I didn't see any bears until the third day, right before I left. So it's, yeah, I'd say spring.
Okay.
Now the mama stands on her back legs when she is trying to find the cubs. The cubs are curious, so they'll stand.
Do you ever see the dad with the family, or he's long gone?
The dad has nothing to do with them. And you have to be real careful with these cubs, because male bears will kill the cubs.
Okay.
And it's a really sad thing. I've had a friend that's watched it happen, and it's a bad thing. But the mama also uses humans, this is what a friend told me, to protect the cubs. So one day I got the privilege of babysitting her cubs that were in a tree, and she went along and foraged and had a good time. But the bears are scared of humans. So, and I just did some more research on it today. She'll use us as a human shield to protect her cubs. And then once she's out of heat and all that stuff happens, then she's not having to work. No, I shouldn't say out of heat, but once the male wants to mate with her, I'm getting that all backwards. Mm-hmm. The female is in jeopardy of losing the cubs. So she'll get us to shield them until that time is over, where the mating season's over. So look for special encounters with the mom and the cub. Super sweet. All right, know their diet. Excuse me. 85% of their diet is plants. So the other 15 is like meat. I've seen them eat crayfish, all kinds of dead carcasses and stuff too, but I didn't witness that. So the important thing is right when they get out of the den, there's not a whole lot for them to eat. This year, they went straight to walnuts, but green stuff is pretty plentiful. The next thing after greens are the blackberries. After the blackberries are the little wild cherries at the top of trees. And they go crazy over those cherries. They'll rip the branches down to pull them closer to them. Now, I don't have a picture of the blackberries. The next thing after that is the walnuts. And this huge bear sat at the base of this tree and crunched on walnuts for the longest time. And they ate grubs. This mama was ripping this tree to pieces. And here's another one of them going after a log. But another thing of not only just knowing their diet will help you to photograph them, but water sources. Now, I know this one particular water source is pretty popular amongst different kinds of animals. So they not only knowing what they eat will help you discover where they are and how to photograph them, but the other end too. And that's their poop. And it's knowing their scat. So know your scat, not your scat, but the bear scat. So it kind of looks like cow manure, a big pile. So an adult. And this one would be a cub. And you can still see the berries inside. Now, don't laugh, but I wanted to learn the difference in how fresh the scat was. I saw a bear go to the restroom. The next day, I went back and photographed it. And I always use the stick test to see how fresh it is. So you've seen the bear scat. Well, now this is not bear scat. As you can see, it's pretty much all fur. So this would be a coyote or a bobcat. This looks like bear scat, but it's not. It's wild boar. And here's another one. They have more teardrops shapes. Also, you need to look for other signs of bears. Just this about a couple weeks ago, it's not a very good shot, but you could see where they knocked down the milkweed and made a path. Crushed walnuts, freshly scraped trees, flipped rocks. And this is the only time, well, maybe one more other time, that I could see the bear clawed the tree. This spring, I was actually able to see a bear print. And then a different print, you could actually see where the claws went into the mud. And just some other things I would tell you is if you see them in the tall brush, look for a place maybe that they'll come out. So I was sitting on top of my SUV, photographing down through the brush to get the bear. And a friend said, well, hey, why don't you go over there? There's a clear cut path. And that's the direction they were headed. So I went over there and got mom and got baby. So I wanted to let you know what I keep in my backpack. And this doesn't mean what you have to have in your backpack, but I always have some kind of spray, sunscreen. I have bear spray on my pack. I have a belt going around my waist. And I do suggest that you watch the video of how to spray it. It's very important. You need to know how to use it. You need to know how to flip that cap off because you may only have a few seconds to be able to dispense that. I'm not trying to scare you, but bears can kill you. And I think you know that. It gets super hot out there. And this is called a O2 Cool fan. And as you can see, you can wear it around your neck and I tighten it real tight to get right under my throat. And I know that you're not going to believe this, but I keep a dead cat in my backpack. I know that sounds gross, but it's really not. If you do any video, a dead cat is just the fluffy part that's put on the outside of the microphone. And this plugs into my camera. But it's a dead cat and it does stay in my backpack. Other things are important medicines that you might need. Rain gear, definitely, because you could be surprised by a quick rain gear for yourself and for your camera. I take a sweat rag, hand sanitizer, my teleconverter, business cards, first aid kit. Oh, my first aid kit. And then Dawn dishwashing detergent. Did you know that a physician told me that if you put Dawn on and rub it super well within 12 hours, that you won't get poison ivy? Well, about 4 weeks ago, that didn't work. I think it's because it broke my skin and it already had gotten in, because it snapped me in my neck. And it's actually, I still have it. And it's been quite a booger trying to get rid of it this time. I'm highly, highly sensitive to it. And the last thing that I take is toilet paper. There is 2 bathrooms in that 11-mile loop. One's maybe halfway, one's at the very end. So if it's a 5-hour bear jam, sometimes, yeah. Anyway, then I would suggest that you have a packing list the night before. And this is my packing list. You make yours up, and I have a little covering on it to keep it from getting messed up. And then here's the muck books I was telling you about. There are lots of streams there. This is me just chilling on my chair and relaxing. These pants are phenomenal. They're made by She, and they're really, really lightweight. And then I always tuck them into my boots. And then this is just sitting on Sparks Lane. And I don't know if I was eating, but we do eat while we're there. And the other thing is to talk to other people. We've talked a little bit about that. I showed you this little guy. And while you're there, even if you're an introvert, talk to others. If you don't talk to others, you may not get this photograph. How did I get this photograph? This is why I'm showing you this twice. My friends and I, we were along the side of the road, and a man pulled up and he said, ladies, did you know that there's a mama and some cubs in that tree right by the road? And sure enough, we walked there, and there she was. We didn't have to walk far at all. And there the cubs were. And I just love this photo. And then there's another time there was a cub. Well, actually, it was a yearling in a field, and there was a truck parked next to the yearling. And I walked by and I was like, oh, it'd be nice to shoot in the back of that truck. And the driver heard me and he goes, ma'am, you can get in the back of my truck and photograph if you'd like. So I was just beyond myself. And I told him that I'd get a photo off of my website and send it to him if he would like. And you're always wanting to try to pay people back for the kindness that they've shown you. But talk to people, have great relationships with the volunteers and the rangers that are there. I was telling you that my 73 senior old friend, I don't want to call her old, she's not, but that's how I met her. And then I have another friend that lives in Knoxville, and that's how I met her. Her name is Robin. And I've actually had my car break down in Cades Cove, no cell phone reception, and I'm a woman. That was not a fun thing because I didn't have anybody with me. And a man came by. He says, ma'am, can I help you? I was like, yes. He jumped my car off and went down Hyatt Lane. It died again. He took me to the ranger station. We actually had to tow my car out of the cove to the next available place. It was a hot mess. And I had so many people helping me to get where I needed to go after that. All right, here's my equipment. And then we're going to talk about some tips to photographing bears. The Nikon D810. I do have the new 500 prime. It's the f5.6e. And that is my primary lens. I do have the 200 to 500, which some of these shots also were. And sometimes I use my teleconverter, depends on how much light that I actually have. I love my Really Right Stuff tripod, Series 3, 4 legs. And you might ask, why do I have 4 legs? And that's because sometimes I'm wanting to get my tripod as high as I can get it to photograph what I'm trying to photograph, and 4 legs is wonderful. And then the head for my camera is the tripod is the Wimberley head, WH200. We've already talked a little bit about a raincoat for your lens, and how to use the lens coat raincoat. And then my muck boots, the Magellan, if that's how you say it, field boots. And then I'll always want to tell you to anticipate too where you think the wildlife may go. A friend and I were on Sparks. Mom was in a tree. Babies were in the tree. Mom was at the base of the tree. Babies were in the tree. And my friend, they disappeared. And I think she went to nurse them. And she said, well, I think I'm going to stay here. And I said, well, I think I'm going to go up to the top of the hill. I've seen some bears up there before. And sure enough, Mama came up there. She had her cubs with her. This tree, I'm not kidding you, was probably less than 5 feet from the road. And this cute little baby decided to pose. It was amazing. So just the forethought of thinking ahead of where you think the bears will go will help. And then shooting through brush. Now, this is probably the only time that I've done that, but I really like the outcome of it. And I wanted to tell you too that I use a long lens, so mine's 500. So I want to have at least 1/500th of a second. Of course, you want to have more if you have more light, because you want to stop action. Stabilization on. And just remember to sometimes add the environment. And shoot on cloudy days. Y'all know all about that because I know a lot of y'all are photographers. But when you're photographing black bears, there's a trick that your camera might overexpose because it's black. So you want to watch your histogram. And in this particular shot, I actually have behind me with a very big print on my wall. I was in the woods, and then these bears went out of the woods, and I didn't change my exposure, blew out the grass. It looked horrible, but I think I did a good job of getting it to come back by making it black and white. So just be careful. Now what I'll do is, even before I get out of my car, I'll go ahead and take a test shot out my window to try to get a guess of what the exposure is. I'm looking forward to getting a mirrorless camera so I can look through and see what the exposure is that I'm getting ready to photograph. And this was the last trip I was there, is to take a lot of shots. Because I did that, I was able to get his tongue sticking out. And man, I did not know that they were that long, but his tongue is very long. When I'm in the woods, I'll carry just really my backpack and my camera. But when I'm out on the road, I'll use my tripod to help steady my camera because I don't have great shoulders. I love my signature on my photo. It's by Photo Logo. It's only $39.99. I think they do a great job. I only have Lightroom or Photoshop Elements. I don't even hardly use that. So I want to encourage you to go on rainy days. And let me fast forward this a little bit. This little guy was just minding his own business. It was a rainy day, as you can hear the rain and the people. And then he heard all the commotion, and then he actually woke up. So go on rainy days. I mean, don't go when it rains all day, but rainy days are really good because they like to sleep in the trees. And everybody got so excited when he looked up. And then this was Poser that I just told you about. And this is a video of him. And it's not a great video because all you see are his feet moving up and down with each breath that he takes. But I like to shoot video. Always use a tripod. make sure that it's good and tight, steady that camera on there. I use 1/60th of a second, and I usually take several videos because either someone's shooting in the background, talking in the background, maybe the light has changed and it's sunny instead of overcast. So I'll take a lot of videos. And then also what you can do is set a timer so you're not actually pushing a button to get it to start recording, and that way you're not shaking your camera. And again, I'll have my dead cat. I'm just saying. For video, I use Final Cut Pro. I'm not great at it. I'll do the final fine-tune things. I basically do the basics, and it's decent, but I know I can get better. It's not as good as I would like it to be, but I like it pretty much. And then why do I keep coming back? Well, as you can see how it is such an amazing place, and you get amazing photos and you meet great people, you get beautiful scenery, but then you get amazing stories. And on my business card is this little guy, and there were some tall trees, small pine trees on both sides of this little trail. And my husband said, I'm not going to go through there. I said, well, I'm going to go through there because there was a bear seen in the area. That's just me. I make silly decisions sometimes. So I walked through the trail and I hear all this scurrying, and this little guy shot up the tree because that's what they do for protection. And his first reaction, it was so amazing. It was fear. He thought I was a male bear, and he just looked at me like this. And then he saw it was just a human, and he goes, "It's just you." And then he was fine after that. And then you get other neat photos. My friend and I were taking a picture of this bear, and we saw he was playing with something, and we're like, well, what is he playing with? But I was like, I don't care. So I shot. Well, I wanted to know what it was. So this was a steep hike for me because he's up on this hill. I climbed until I found it. And here it is. And here's another picture of the other side. It's a truck side view mirror. And then I was like, I've got to clean up all that glass because I don't want that bear getting his foot cut. So I picked up all the glass and I put it in a bag, took it to the ranger station, and the rangers asked me if I would mind sharing my photos with him because he wanted to share with the other rangers because he's never seen anything like this before. So that I was just tickled with that, being able to find something that no one else has been able to show or discover. And then, yeah, he was lost. So I couldn't get the little tag off of his leg. But I went to the ranger station and I reported it. And I don't know if he ever found its owner, the owner ever came and got him, but that was really neat. And why do I keep coming back the most? Oh, heavens. Once you come there and you see these tiny little guys, they'll just sweep you off your feet. They're just amazing. And I just feel so peaceful there. I'm like Linda said, a person of faith, and I feel close to God when I'm out in nature. And I even pray and ask him to show me or bring to me what he wants me to photograph. So if you look at these shots, you go, well, how do you get that? Well, the Lord a lot of times answers my prayer and brings them to me. So, yeah. So a couple little things first is about social media. Linda's spoken about social media. It's super important. Put your work out there. Reference your website. What I do for Cades Cove is there's 1 million Facebook pages for Cades Cove. And I'll share mine to a bunch of those places. And if you go to my Facebook photography page, Judy Royal Glenn Photography, and you look at my videos, you'll see how many views it's had. And that's because I'm using the platform of something else to help myself and to build my tribe. And Instagram as well. I shared a Bob White video of a bird, and I used the hashtag of a hub. And because of that, they shared it on their page, and it had over like 45,000 views just from me using the hashtag of a hub. So it works. It works. So I mentioned earlier, what should you do if you see a bear? And if you want to, get your cell phones out, or you can actually do your homework, like I mentioned earlier. Here is one of the slides. Now, I'm not going to go through all this because there's different instances, and each instance requires you to do something else, and it's long. Here's the other one. And then here's the resource I mentioned again that you can go to. This is actually the map, and this is the nps.org. I do use Denoise AI. I love that, especially when you're doing low light in the woods with bears. And like I mentioned, I use Final Cut Pro. So we did a lot of talking tonight. I would talk a little bit more, but my throat was going out. We talked a little bit about the history of Cades Cove. We talked about other things that you could photograph, from the flora to the other deer, lots of other critters to photograph. I told you about some negative aspects of it. There's not many. I showed you my coveted shots that I love to photograph in the Cove. And I also told you to know your subject. And with that, we talked about a little bit of everything, knowing what they eat, know a little bit about the other end, about their scat. And I know probably half of y'all never wanted to know that, and I apologize. We talked about signs of bears. We talked about backpack essentials, and talked about the importance of talking to people. And even if you're an introvert, I encourage you highly to talk to people. And then we talked about photographing black bears and a tad about shooting video. And that's why I keep coming back, is because Cades Cove is so amazing. So I wanted to share with you my social media. I go by Judy Royal Glenn Photography, pretty much on everything. Even on Facebook, I have a personal page, but then I also have my photography page. So I want to thank everybody for having me speak with y'all. I want to ask one final question. So who is daydreaming about coming to Cades Cove to photograph black bears? And that's it.
I think there's a few people, Judy, that are thinking about it, maybe even planning to. So I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's start with the scary stuff. Carolyn's curious, have you ever had any encounters?
Raven kind of put me on edge a little bit when he started coming towards me. But bears are very curious in nature. But when he started coming towards me, I started doing my backpedaling and kept my eyes on him. I have been in a situation where I saw someone get bluff charged. So that's when the bear runs at you and then stops immediately, just to kind of scare you. And I've watched that. It didn't happen to me. And then I had a friend actually got too close, and the bear snapped its jaw at her. So they let you know. The closest thing that I've encountered, and this was probably about 2 months ago, I didn't realize that the cubs were up in a tree. I saw Mom, and she bluff charged my car. she came running and stopped, but I didn't know that the bears were up in the tree, her cubs.
Have you ever had to I guess then maybe you've never had to use your bear spray, so you haven't
No,
had that close of an encounter.
no.
Jamie, well, good. Because
Yes.
we've talked about me coming out, and I'm like, well, if you've been that close, then I don't need to be going with you. So Jamie's curious. Do you keep food in a bear box in your car when you're in the park?
No, but that's probably a good idea. They do tell people that are camping that they have to really secure their food and stuff, but no, I do not.
Okay. And Susan's going to ask this question is, I know that you live pretty close to Cades Cove, but so you're coming from home. Her question is, where do you stay when you go there? Where would you recommend if you're not staying in?
Well, back when I lived in Georgia, I would leave at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I would go up so that I would get there a little around sunrise, and then I would spend the night in Townsend. I can't think of the name of it, but it's look at the last place to stay before you get to the Little River campground. It's the last little mom and pop kind of place on the left. Great place to stay. People are really nice there.
Okay.
Can't think of the name of it.
It'll come to you after we get off.
Probably.
If you think about it, send it to me and then I will get it to the person that's asked. There was another question in here from John Chitty. So he's going to Fairfield Glade, Tennessee in October. He's wanting to know, I'm not sure where Fairfield Glade is, and by your look, you don't know either. But the question is, can you do Cades Cove? Is it drivable on a day trip? But
yeah. I mean, just tell them to get there at sunrise.
Okay.
And then just plan on staying till sunset, and then get out if he's not that far away, then they could travel back to wherever he's staying. I don't know how far away it is.
I say do it, John Chitty. You're retired. You've got plenty of time to goof around.
There's a campground there too as well. And now it books up really fast. So go ahead and tell them to go to the website and start looking at the campground sites that they have there.
Another question snuck in here. Is parking on the cross lanes acceptable? She says, I know the traffic jam on the loop discourages no parking. So the question from Jamie is parking on the cross lanes acceptable?
What is cross lanes?
I don't know if that means either, Jamie. Let's see.
They were the not on the loop, but the two lane that go across that.
Oh, okay. Sparks and Hyatt. I do. Yeah, I'll pull over in a heartbeat and just pull way over and make sure people have enough room to pass, because there are so many amazing things to photograph on those two roads.
Okay. Judy, there are a lot of nice comments about your presentation. So I will always make sure that you get a copy.
Thank you.
Chat line. With that, I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm ready to close out this session. But before we wrap up, is there any projects that you're working on? What are you doing with, okay, I'll just ask, what are you doing with all these bear pictures? Because I know you've only showed us a very small portion of your favorite images. And when you do a presentation, that's something I always tell people, if you put in 100 photos, it's a lot of photos to get through. And so, you put a nice number in there. What are you doing with all them? Are you going to work on a coffee table book? What are you doing?
Actually, I just went to a writer's conference in May, and I sat across the table from a gentleman And he said they were looking for a gift book series. And I said, well, that's exactly what I want to publish. And it would be called Seen Through God's Eyes. And it would be various 8x8 books for people going through different periods. Maybe it's grieving, maybe it's, different things. And I was just asking my husband yesterday when would be too soon to get back with him. And that's what I'm hoping, is to do a gift book series. Now, not just on bears, but lots of other things. But there's so many pictures that I have in Lightroom. It's not even funny that I haven't processed yet. But what I do have and is processed is up on my website, which is for sale. So it's judyroyalglennphotography.com. And you'll see most of them on there. You can go to my Black Bears gallery, and you'll see most of what I shared tonight, because the other billions are not even processed yet. It takes me a very long time, because I take so many photos to narrow it down to a little bit. And then I got to take that little bit and spend a bunch of time doing just one photo. So my friend can zip them out. My 73-year-old friend, I keep talking about, her name is Jan. She can zip those photos out like crazy. But I have 2 puppies that just turned a year old. We just moved. I'm trying to do my writing. I'm trying to do my photography. I'm raising monarchs and other butterflies. And it's just, I asked my husband today, is that all we do is eat? Because I mean, I'm so busy during the day that just the time just flies by.
Yeah.
So.
Well, busy hands. That's one of the, that's one of the blessings, is to be a creative person. And it's always ideas. There's always ideas to, kind of execute and think through. And then you've got projects, and, you and I, we kind of giggle, but we are very similar with our craziness, but it's nice to be surrounded by people that allow you to do that. Yes. So Judy, again, thank you for coming and doing another presentation for us. And guys, I talked her into doing another one on hummingbirds, and so she's going to be doing that next week. And I hate to tell you guys, it's just for the ladies, but you can find us, and I'll post it on Texas Women's Photography Circle if you're on Facebook or on Instagram. So look for that. For the guys that we don't allow into the room, I do post them to the YouTube channel, so it'll be there. You just can't come. It's kind of a no boys allowed kind of thing. Judy, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody got something out of it.
I think they do. I will say this. I was like, this is the first, I think you're number 118. I think you're the first person to show scat in a presentation.
My friend, my 73-year-old friend laughs at me. Are you going to take a picture of that? I'm like, yes.
Yeah. But it's useful if you're going to be in the
very
field.
Useful.
It's something that, we don't really want to look at it, but at the same point in time, there's a reason that this will come in handy later down the road, when you're on those trails and you're thinking, I'm going to go into Cades Cove and look for bears. So Judy, thank you again. You guys can connect with Judy at judyroyalglennphotography.com. And if you're on Instagram, please give her a follow at Judy Royal Glenn Photography. So next week, Chris Fitch will be here to inspire us and maybe boost our creativity with his presentation. And now for something completely different. So I've only kind of got him a little bit out of him on that. So it should be really interesting. So until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you again soon.